Moscow was unable to protect its main ally in Latin America. After the U.S. special operation in Venezuela, the Russian Foreign Ministry merely expressed concern about the situation. Russia's permanent representative to the UN called for the release of Nicolas Maduro and his wife, and the government drafted a letter in support of the people of Venezuela. So, in the Kremlin, they're basically just silently watching what's happening. It's 10,000 kilometers in a straight line from Moscow to Caracas. But for many years now, Venezuela has been an important direction in Russian foreign policy. When Hugo Chavez came to power in 1999, he began building strategic alliances with Beijing and Moscow, presenting this as an alternative to Western dominance. Later on, Nicolas Maduro continued his policy, and in 2025, he signed and ratified a strategic partnership agreement with Russia. The document provided for cooperation and assistance in the fields of energy and security. But as we can see, this agreement did not help Maduro's regime. By the way, last year on May 9th, Nicolas Maduro himself was an honored guest at Putin's parade. He showered the Kremlin dictator with compliments and called Russia a key power of humanity. But even that didn't work.
With his lightning-fast operation to capture the Venezuelan dictator Nicolas Maduro, U.S. President Donald Trump showed that the multipolar world of anti-Western dictatorial alliances built by Putin from Caracas to Tehran is essentially powerless. Everyone saw that Putin is not a reliable ally in critical situations. This has already been observed in Karabakh, Syria, and Iran. From a Politico publication,
interestingly, the swift U.S. operation in Venezuela sparked a wave of criticism of Putin within the Russian Z community. Some wrote that this is exactly how things should be done, instead of dragging the country into a years-long bloody war. Others lamented that even Putin could be kidnapped this way. They could fly in, do their job, and fly out. And still others wondered how it happened that the Russian military power, so glorified by Kremlin propaganda, turned out to be so useless. The thing is, for almost 2 decades, Russia was the main supplier of weapons to Venezuela. The regime received fighter jets, transport helicopters, tanks, infantry fighting vehicles, and small arms from the Kremlin. Recently, Moscow delivered the latest air defense systems to Caracas. At the time, Maduro boasted a lot about this equipment and said that now the country was reliably protected. And here, Moscow suffered 2 major blows at once. First, Venezuela's entire air defense system was quickly suppressed by the Americans. And second, Washington gained access to many samples of Russian weaponry.
the most interesting for the U.S. could be the S-300VM air defense missile systems, which were supplied to Venezuela in 2013 in the amount of 2 battalions. Also, in October 2025, Russia transferred an unknown number of Panzer air defense missile gun systems and Buk M2 air defense systems to the country over several Il-76TD flights. And considering that Russia has actively exported and even now continues to supply some countries with its air defense systems, including Iran, information about Russian air defense systems is of undeniable value. From a publication by Defense Express.
According to ABC News, Donald Trump has already demanded that Venezuela completely sever its military and economic ties with Russia, China, Iran, and Cuba. Washington is also insisting on exclusive cooperation in the oil sector and on the United States having priority rights to purchase Venezuelan oil. What does Moscow stand to lose here? First of all, Rozarubezhneft, which holds the rights to develop fields with reserves of more than 2 billion barrels, will have to say goodbye to its plans. But what worries Putin more than the loss of assets is the global trend of falling oil prices. Against the backdrop of rising military spending, this would be a real disaster for the budget of the aggressor country.
The seizure of Venezuela's oil wealth and the expected drop in prices due to increased supply could seriously harm the Russian economy, which has already suffered from the grueling war against Ukraine and international sanctions. Thus, the seizure of Nicolas Maduro is not only a geopolitical blow, but also a huge economic blow for Vladimir Putin. Peter Ruff, director of the Center for Europe and Eurasia at the Hudson Institute, in an interview with Le Monde.
The overthrow of the Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad in December 2024 seriously undermined Putin's image as a reliable ally of authoritarian regimes. In the summer of 2025, during the direct military conflict between Israel and Iran, Moscow also chose to remain inactive. At that time, Tehran was deeply offended. They had helped Putin with both drones and missiles when he launched his full-scale war against Ukraine. But when Iran started having problems, their so-called strategic partner only offered verbal support. Now, after the overthrow of Maduro, the Kremlin risks losing its last remaining allies.
For years, Putin convinced these countries, their politicians, and their societies that he was an ally and a friend. After Maduro is overthrown, it will become clear to everyone. Putin's Russia is not just not a friend, it's a country held hostage by its own leadership and its war. People will continue to trade with Russia and help it circumvent sanctions, only when it is profitable and safe for those providing the help. But the political prestige of Putin's regime has taken a serious hit in South and Central America, as well as, though to a lesser extent, in Asia and Africa. This is yet another sign that the image of a great power is falling apart. Konstantin Eggert in a column for Deutsche Welle.
In Venezuela, among other things, Russia has lost a significant amount of money. According to Reuters, between 2006 and 2017, the Kremlin allocated $17 billion to the government of that country. Moscow took advantage of its position as a lender of last resort and sought to gain greater control over oil reserves. But in the end, it was left with nothing. And that's not all. Military experts predict that after this special operation in Venezuela, no one will want to buy Russian weapons, which means there will be yet another huge hole in the budget.
Commentators close to the Kremlin regularly boasted that Venezuela's Russian air defense systems would stop any U.S. aggression. However, their predictions did not come true, since the Russian S-300 and S-400 systems also failed to prevent Israeli attacks on Syria and Iran, and Russian airspace is regularly violated by Ukrainian drones. Trust in the quality of Moscow's air defense systems is at its lowest point in history. This reality could hinder Russia's post-war efforts to once again become a leading international arms supplier. Samuel Romani, columnist for The Telegraph.
Well, let's sum things up. The overthrow of Nicolas Maduro not only clearly demonstrated Russia's inability to protect its allies, but also weakened Putin's image, both internationally and at home. The Kremlin lost control over Venezuela's oil reserves and faced significant financial losses. The failure of Venezuela's air defense and the U.S. gaining access to Russian weaponry dealt a serious blow to Putin's military machine. At a critical moment, Moscow was powerless and vulnerable, and aside from threats and expressions of concern, it had nothing to offer.